What is up, Facebook? How are you all doing? I am Todd Bookspan, the founder of Win by Noon. On behalf of myself and Dave Savage and the Mortgage Coach team, I'm excited to have not just on Zoom, but right next to me, none other than Joshua Mettle.
Morning, everybody. How we doing? Happy Friday.
And today I'm running the show, but I got my wingman, Dave Savage. Normally I'm his. Hey, what's up, Dave? Where are you at?
What's up? It's good to be your wingman this time. Where am I? I'm in LA. I'm in LA live at a sales rally.
LA. You know, it's always, when you travel that much and you have to remember where you are, that's always a challenge.
Yeah, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, is this my room or, oh no, it's a hotel.
So I'll pre-frame it. You know, it's one of the things that I think you guys all know Josh and Josh's resume, but I've known Josh now for a decade, really primarily from masterminding together over the years, and had the honor of being his coach for a year. And then now we just get to hang out a few times a year when he comes to town, either for vacation or for Genius Network, which is the entrepreneur group that we're in with Steve Sims, who I hosted last month when he was in town. And with Josh, we have a good time because, you know, we get to hang out, work out, and really brainstorm on challenges that we're seeing in the industry. So I grabbed him away from a meeting he spent a lot of money to be part of, so that he could share with all of you. And we've got a lot of thoughts to cover. And Dave's got a lot of questions that he's kind of teed up as well. So kind of as we launch, why don't you, Josh, real quick, bring us up to speed at where you're at from a team perspective and a productions perspective this year, because I know you guys are crushing it.
Yeah, we're having a great year. We'll almost double production. I guess that's not quite true. We did about 330 million last year, and I think we're stretching to hit 500 million this year as a team. So not quite double, but it's been a great year. It hasn't been without challenges. And so I think that's going to be part of what we're going to dive into, is that there's probably a lot of us out there that are having record years or near record years, and that brings a unique set of challenges. And I think what we want to dive in at some point here is, how do we respond to those challenges? Are we going to let that incredible opportunity that we have and is ahead of us turn us into egomaniacs and jerks? Or are we going to handle this process a little bit more grateful? And are we going to handle this in a way that we can learn and become better people?
Love it. Love it. So stay tuned on that. But Dave, you know, what I loved is you got some questions from some Mortgage Coach users in our community with regards to Josh and his team and how Mortgage Coach fits in. So why don't you jump in and ask him those questions?
Yeah, no, since I'm going to have to leave, I did have one other Mortgage Coach public announcement. Wanted to make sure everyone knew that we now have an IGTV channel. I'm here in LA, and Rene Rodriguez was here. Him and I had breakfast yesterday and today. And yesterday we recorded in IGTV. So check it out. They're always less than 10 minutes. Sometimes I'm taking like a full 1 hour. Like, what's the highlight? Josh, I think you remember that interview with Shayla Gifford. I took what I thought was the 9 best minutes, and that's in IGTV. So anyways, Mortgage Coach community, check out Mortgage Coach in IGTV.
I assume that 9 minutes was the part when I was in the little screen and she was in the big screen. Is that, just out of curiosity, is that right?
You know, I don't know. You know, Sid Savage, my daughter, has taken over that channel, and I'm letting her pick it. So you'll see what she thought was the best 9 minutes.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
You're Switzerland.
Yeah.
Well, I was on for 30 seconds at the beginning of that call. So,
hey, the truth is, we all were shown up by Shayla. She did an amazing job in that interview. And if anybody hasn't watched that,
absolutely,
that's $1 million interview. If someone could build an entire business plan around it, she's brilliant.
Yeah, it really was a very special interview. And do check out the full interview. I was actually speaking at a sales rally last week, and I had the 2 top producers on the panel, and both these guys are over 100 million. Some of the best loan officers in the country. And I didn't push it. He shouted out to that interview, and he said, that is a must-watch by everybody. He goes, I've watched it 5 times. He goes, I originally watched it because I knew her by reputation, and I just wanted to see how I stacked up. You know, so he's like, I just watched it out of curiosity. He goes, oh, my God. He goes, I watched it at least 5 times and got value all 5 of the time. So, guys, do check it out. So Lance Johnson is a $150 million a year producer. He follows Mortgage Coach community big time. He's with a bank. I'm not going to mention the bank. They don't have Mortgage Coach yet, but he wants them to. He's the #1 loan officer at this company. And he's like, you know what? I really think mortgage coach could be the thing that takes me from 150 to 200. And he goes, and I talked to him because he was prepping me for a meeting with his executive team. And he goes, if I do have a request, and it's funny, Josh, it's perfect you're on this call. He goes, would you, next time you're talking to Josh Mettle, because he's a big fan of yours, or Jeremy Forcier, would you ask them how they handle the handoff? Like, he goes, I have a feeling I could do 50 million more in production, get to that 200 mark, if I could just fine tune my handoff. And so, Josh, you're here for Lance Johnson. You know, walk him through the Mettle team handoff.
Well, first of all, Lance, 150 million in production is massive. So, like, high five, brother. That's incredible. The first thing I would say about the handoff is, as I've tried to, you know, as we've grown, I've tried to figure out how to pull myself out of the mortgage process without losing the connection with the client. And what I basically boiled it down to is it doesn't always work this way in full transparency, but my goal is to have an initial consultation over the phone. Those will usually last anywhere between 10 and 30 minutes, really depending on how the conversation's flowing. Create some immediate connection there. I send them a video of me immediately afterwards. And then I want to film a total cost analysis when the initial proposal goes out with our wish list of documents for pre-approval. And I want to film a total cost analysis when they go under contract. And that's the only thing that I wanted to do. So just, I guess, in frame of reference in regards to what I think are the most crucial pieces of the sales process, it's initial conversation. That could be called a hopes and dreams call. I think that's what Danny Hariani has called it for years. And 2 total cost analysis where they get my video and face, and then 1 or 2 video phone conversations on my phone that takes me, 30 seconds to film. So I think those are the most crucial pieces of my entire sales process. And I believe everything else can be given to somebody else to be delegated to somebody else on the team. Now, to answer your question, in regards to how we handle that handoff, so I'm going to give you 2 handoffs. The first would be, we make the initial call, we figure their hopes and dreams, they complete a client questionnaire or application for us, and then I create that total cost analysis that addresses whatever came up in that conversation. Based on what I heard you say, this is the option that I think makes the most sense. And then from there, I've got an assistant that's following up on gathering all those documents, getting the pre-approval, and really marching the transaction forward until they go under contract. Once they go under contract, my loan officer assistant's going to recreate that total cost analysis, update everything in live time, basically communicate what they can expect the day of closing. I'm going to step back up. I'm going to give them a really heart-filled congratulations. I'm super excited for them and their family as their dream of either their dream home or their dream of their first home is coming to fruition. And we're just honored to be a part of it. And it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun over the next 30 days. So get ready for a great experience. And I'm just kind of setting that expectation that we're going to try and have fun through this journey. Also, if it's a difficult loan, because we were talking about that this morning, I use that as a time to let them know that, we've already talked that your loan is a little bit out of the box and things are going to get a little bumpy. It's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster, but I'm going to get you to the finish line and everything's going to be safe. So I'm filming that TCA once they go under contract. That goes out. Assistants are following up on disclosures and getting those documents back. And then that link to that TCA, that is the communication cycle, the medium for communication to our team, that this is what the client is anticipating. So if an LE goes out or a CD goes out and it's in conflict with that number, then our team's going to reach back out to us and say, hey, I'm about to send out an LE. I noticed cash disclosed is wrong. I noticed that the taxes just went up by $100. Same thing happens when we go to the closing disclosure. That form that we fill out has the link to the TCA. And the CD team, if the TCA matches the CD, they just send it. So 95% of the time, I never even know a CD's going out. They just manage that. Every once in a while, they'll go, oops, taxes went up $200. Did processing already communicate that? Because you never want a CD to go out and them to be caught blindside. You need a conversation before that happens. So the medium for communication as to what the client is expecting to the entire team is the link to the TCA.
How detailed is your conversation in the TCA with them? Are you going into the weeds on their loan? Hey, your payment is this, or here's your 2 options, or that's already done after the first one?
That's already done on the first one. So on the first TCA, you may have 3 or 4 options. and there's a conversation about, based on what I'm seeing and based on the time horizon you're going to be on the home, it seems to me that option 3 makes the most amount of sense. Feel free to reach out to me if you see that there's anything different, but that's how I'm going to structure your loan and your pre-approval moving forward. Then I have an assistant follow up and make sure that that all jives with them and we're congruent. As soon as that happens, we go into the TCA. Let's assume we had 4 options to start. We go into the TCA and we type in removed, removed, removed. So now there's only one option left on that TCA. So that when they go back under contract, we all know that we communicated via editing that TCA that it's option 3 that everybody's decided on, and then that gets updated. Now, when they go under contract, really there's very little discussion about the numbers. I've updated the total cost analysis.
Just getting excited about it.
It's all excitement, yeah. And really what I'm doing, because I don't want to have a 30-minute conversation about them going through disclosures, there's excitement. I've updated the numbers. There's your cash to close and your payment to the best of our knowledge at this point. And let me tell you about the most important step in the entire loan process, which is your mortgage loan disclosures, because we can't move forward with appraisal and title and underwriting until that's done. Boom. Then I just explained to them how to do the disclosures, and high five, super stoked. Sam will follow up with you.
Done. Like it.
Yeah. Boom, boom. So a couple coaching notes. I'm going to put down below at some point when I have a chance today, Josh's 30-second video that he puts out at the point of sale, because he's setting the expectations at the point of sale in a very clear, personal, competitive, differentiated way. He is, driving the client to download the app, do the experience, delivers the TCA. And then I actually interviewed a couple years ago, and I'll put a link down below, Jeremy and one of his assistants. And I asked his assistant, hey, what's the most important thing Jeremy does for you? Or, I can't remember exactly how I asked the question. And she went into the fact that he includes the link to the total cost analysis makes my job so much easier, because I know what was communicated. Exactly. I can actually hear a recording of the conversation of what was presented, how it was presented, so I understand the expectations. So go ahead, Josh.
Something just popped into my mind when you said that. Our operations manager, right now there's 185 loans in our pipeline.
Just a few.
So we have a few. And our operations manager is always harping at our loan officers, look, if the loan changes throughout the process, the appraisal comes in low, you end up locking a higher rate, I'm getting a gift fund, so now I want to go to a 10% down, you have to send out an updated total cost analysis. Because if you don't do that and then you don't forward that back to the ops team, now we don't know if the CD's off. So from just echoing your operations gal, or Jeremy's operations gal that said that, our ops team says the same thing. You are screwing us down here in operations and making things completely inefficient if you don't send an updated total cost analysis, because now we don't know what the client's expecting because it's changed midstream.
So here's
real quick, Dave. My recommendation would be is just put it somewhere in your CRM, right? So like our customized CRM, we actually have a spot that says MC TCA, and then we actually cut and paste a link in there. But if yours, you have a lockdown CRM at your company, take some other field that you're not using and make that your TCA field, so your team always has access to the most recent TCA.
Yeah, or even in your, your submission letter, because if you update the TCA, the link's not going to change.
Right.
And so a couple other coaching notes, because I interviewed Wally Elderberry last week, and when he shows up for his consultation, it's green on his calendar because he's trying to keep 75% of his time green time, selling time. And then the link to the TCA is in his meeting. And then we integrate with a lot of CRMs where the link would be in there. So hopefully that's helpful. I'll put the link to Jeremy down below. Lance, I'll also ask this question of Jeremy when I get a chance. Guys, I'm going to jump in a minute. I want to ask you one more question, because this came up at this event. There's 1,000 loan officers at this event, and a number of them were asking me about rate shopping. They're getting rate shopped further into the process. And I know, Josh, you provided TCA, and I know it reduces some rate shopping. But, I've interviewed you enough times to know that you do a really good job of using Mortgage Coach. And anybody who doesn't know what TCA is, that's total cost analysis. If you could speak to, okay, now the rate shopping comes, how do you handle those objections, and how do you use Mortgage Coach to do that? And then, guys, I will be done and let you guys rock it out.
In full transparency, there's no way you're going to get around that 100%. I would be remiss to not admit that I just lost a loan yesterday from a client that we've been working with for 6 months, and they saw a billboard driving down the freeway, and the rate was 0.25% below ours. They called them up, they got a quote. We were off by 225 basis points or 245 basis points. And I lost a loan, and it was for my top realtor, and that stings. So I'm not going to say that I'm immune to that. But what I will say is that the best way I know to protect myself against that type of situation is to start creating that relationship, that connection, that's the word I'm looking for, as early in the process as humanly possible. So I would say that you could protect yourself from a large percentage of those rate shoppers that may be coming to fruition in terms of an issue once they're under contract, or a week after, or let's say after they've gotten your LE. But that's really not where the problem started. The problem started at the very first phone call. Maybe you weren't all there with them. Maybe you were not really trying to figure out what's the one thing. You know, Shayla said this, I believe I got this from her. What's the one thing that is the most important thing to this family? What's the fear I need to uncover? What's the opportunity here? What's the connection point here? And so I would just go back to saying, if you're having that issue repeatedly, I would focus not so much on the rates, but on the connection starting at the first call. How good are your questions? How much do you care? Like, do you really give a crap? If you do, they will know that. And then another thing I learned from Tim Brahim, which I thought was the most brilliant thing ever from a guy who hasn't originated loans in 10 years or 15 years. Like, I don't know how
It's been a while.
I don't know how he's still connected like this. But Tim said, why are we not connecting with our clients that we don't have an opportunity to meet face to face by pulling out our iPhone right after that first meeting? And just, it doesn't have to be, you know, you just stick it up and you just look them straight in the eye and you just go, man, Dave, it was so rad to talk to you. I'm really excited to serve you and your family. I heard you say that you're 39 years old and this is going to be your family's first home. I cannot imagine how stoked you are to walk your kids into that home for the first time and show them bedrooms that are their very own. That's a freaking connection, right? And I'm going to inoculate myself against a significant amount of rate shopping if I tell somebody that not only did I listen to them, but I have kids and I know how important it is when I walk my little girl into a house and tell her that's your new bedroom. That's a moment that you're going to have with that child for the rest of your freaking life. So that's the level we're trying to get to. We're trying to get out of the head game. We're trying to get into the heart and the connection game. And if you want to protect yourself from rate shoppers, get into the heart game.
Love that. And so for anybody that's having challenges, we've got a playbook called the Lead Conversion Playbook. And it starts with how were you referred? It starts with how do you have that hopes and dreams? I think I actually have a category for personal connection that Tim Brahim was my interview on how to personally connect and what Josh went through. It includes the total cost. And it even includes that, like, let's just say you are 3/8 of the difference in interest rate. Don't negotiate the rates. Negotiate the cost over 5 years. Because here's the deal. Sometimes it's like less than $5,000 over 5 years. And if you personally connected with someone and you have all that going for you, and the cost over 5 years is negligible, you know, don't negotiate on rates and monthly payment. Negotiate on cost over 5 years. It's great. Now, in this case, Josh, I'm sure the cost over 5 years was so significant. The only thing you might have done is, well, negotiate over the cost of 5 years. You know, take it from $15,000 to $5,000. And hey, am I not worth $5,000 over 5 years? And remember, I'm going to manage your mortgage to make sure you always have the right. And I'm not saying you could have saved it, but I'm just saying, guys, you know, what Josh said is most important. But remember, if all you're doing is providing a fee worksheet, really your best weapon is a price exception. And you're not going to get a 250-point price exception. So, you know, negotiate cost over time. And by the way, you can only negotiate cost over time if you presented that at the front end. So make sure you give a really good value prop at the front end. So Josh, anything else you want to say on that before I let Todd take over and you guys rock it out?
Only that we will miss you for the rest of this interview, and I hope you have a great Friday.
Well, hey, have fun, man, as I know you will, bro. Take care, you guys. Rock it out, and I'll listen to the recording.
All right, good seeing you, Dave.
Take care, guys.
So, but the interesting to me, it's always about asking questions, right? So, we heard a guy talk about high ticket closing yesterday, and he talked about asking better questions. And I think that you do such a good job, because a lot of loan officers would miss the fact that the guy was 39, that he had a daughter, and that they were moving into their first home. So what's your process for, getting past the, hey, tell me what your rate is, Josh, tell me what programs you have, and then getting to the conversation where you're learning more about them and their family?
Yeah, well, there's a pivot, right? So sometimes the first conversation will start as, hey, you were referred to me by so-and-so, what's your rate and what's your fee? Well, what I would want to find out, if that's how I was getting referred, is how is that person referring you? Because if that's the conversation starter, they're probably not referring you very strongly.
Right.
And you might want to have a conversation with that realtor about what they're saying to set you up. But if you are getting that question, let's say it's a cold lead or maybe a consumer direct lead, which we deal with a lot. So we deal with a lot of, hey, what's your rate and what's your fee? And so you need to be ready for that, and you need to have a pivot. And the best pivot is a question, right? So you'd always acknowledge, and you'd say, oh, that's a great question, Todd. Have you been watching what's going on in the mortgage market lately? And then you might have some sort of response for that. And I say, yeah, you're exactly right. Based on the trajectory of the market and what the Federal Reserve's been doing, it's an 80% chance we're going to get another Fed rate cut at the next meeting. And so one of the things that I do is I'm constantly watching the mortgage market. I don't know if you know this, but mortgage-backed securities are traded just like stocks. So we could open here and end here. And that may be the wrong time to lock at the top of this microcycle, because we may bounce off a ceiling of resistance and go lower. So I'm going to manage that for you. And let me ask you another question. How long do you think you're going to be in this house?
That always throws them off too, because they haven't even bought the house yet or necessarily found it too.
Well, yeah, but my point with that is I pivoted. I validated your question as an important one. I asked you a question. So I just took you, like all you martial artists back there, there's a forward and then there's a retreat, right? There's an attack and there's a retreat. There's a yin and there's a yang. So you came at me in an offensive posture. Bam, 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 right? I covered, I validated, and then with my question, it's a great question. Have you been watching what's going on in the mortgage interest rate market? Now you have to move backwards, right?
So how technical do you get in that conversation? Because I hear loan officers all the time are like, well, the candlestick chart did this, 3 basis points, and right?
No, too much. I'm letting them actually, I will tell you how detailed I get based on their response. So if their response is, I'll say, hey, have you been watching what's going on with the mortgage market this year and the interest rates? If they start talking about the next Fed meeting on November 20th, then I may get pretty deep. And we may talk about mortgage-backed securities and how inflation and upcoming, I may get deep. If people go, well, I think they've been going down, right? Then I'm going to go real surface. But the point is, acknowledge, ask them a question, so that instead of them coming at you, they're actually giving you some space. Now they have to engage their brain and think, and then pivot. Yeah, I totally agree. I do think that rates will continue to go down, and we should really be aware of the next Fed meeting. Now, how long do you think you're going to be in this house?
So you're meeting them where they're at, then you're pivoting again.
I'm pivoting again.
You're showing the guy who thinks he knows more than you about the financial markets that you know as much as him, if not more.
That's right. That's exactly right. It gives you an opportunity to express that. Dan Kennedy has this, who's a great marketer that Todd and I both know. I don't know that we know him, but we have studied him.
We follow him.
Yeah, yes. We followed him. He has this pyramid of influence. And at the bottom is like the general practitioner, right? So that would be the bank loan officer that works at the branch that comes in and he knows a little bit about home equity lines, right? And at the top of that is the celebrity expert. And below that's the expert. So you want to try and, we try to use media and social media to position ourselves as a celebrity expert. But what we want to try and do in that initial conversation is to move ourselves up that pyramid of influence. So actually somebody asking what your rate is actually an opportunity for you to immediately move yourself up that pyramid of influence, because it opens. I mean, it would be stupid for me to say, if you didn't ask that question, it would be stupid for me to say, now, Todd, what I'd like to do over the next 5 minutes is tell you just a little bit about mortgage-backed securities.
I was hoping you'd go there, Josh.
Yeah, right. So you can use that attack or that question, which you know you're going to get fairly frequently, to have a great script that moves you up the pyramid of influence.
So the conversation then shifts, and then where are you getting from the personal then to back to the numbers in that call? Or
Yeah.
are you not?
No. So that is the pivot that opens up the first question, right? And then I'm going to go down and really what I'm trying to do in that initial call is I'm trying to figure out if they're going to have any challenges financing, right? How much are you putting down? What's your price point? Have you owned a home before? How are you feeling about buying your first home? Like, are there some, I remember when I bought my first home, I was scared to death. I remember that payment was $872, and that was the largest payment I'd ever committed to myself by, 300%. And I had a lot of apprehension and fear around that. How are you feeling? Freak, man, I'm completely freaked out. Like, I'm really glad you brought that up. $2,200, that just seems crazy. Okay, well, one of the things we're going to do through this consultative process is I'm going to look at your overall financial situation. And based on your debt load, based on your income, based on your earning potential, and your liquidity, I'm going to tell you if I think you're out in left field. And I'm not somebody who's going to push you to 300,000 if you need to be at 220,000. And this just might not be the right time to buy a house. But I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to talk to you about that. Oh, dude, thank you so much, right? So you can use those little opportunities to try and figure out where their fears are and to dig a little bit deeper. And then again, and I totally learned this from Tim Brahim, I'm trying to move from my head to my heart in any opportunity, right? So what are the things that you can move from head and heart? Fears, apprehensions. Sometimes people are just fearful of things they don't know. And you can alleviate some of that. On the upside of that, you can magnify some of those amazing moments. Like I talked about having, if you find out that they're currently living in a rented home with 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, and parents will say this to your clients, will say this, I'm so excited because my kids get to have a bedroom of their own. Do not skip over that comment. That is like a cracked open moment of their heart. And I'm like, question, and how old are your kids again? And there's, oh man, that's going to be really cool. If you talk to your daughter about how you're going to decorate her room, oh yeah, we're going to have the princess. And those are the moments where you can go beyond rate sheet, beyond those questions, start connecting. And then when you pull out your video after the call, or when you film your TCA, you better mention the daughter and the pink room and reconnect and tell them that you listened to that.
Well, and I like the fact that you also share your own personal fears, right? You're building that bond. Oh, I was fearful too. Oh, yeah, I got a daughter too. And so I think that's where a lot of loan officers miss it, is you forget that you need to be human too and share your stories transparently. You've heard Josh use that word a couple of times today. And I think that is, one of the areas I've been talking a lot lately, because I've been training my brother-in-law. He's been in the business for 4 months, and he comes out of fast food service. And, he's so funny. He built such great rapport. Now, he doesn't know much about mortgages yet, but he's still closing more mortgages than a lot of people, primarily because he cares about them.
Yep.
And then eventually we'll teach him how mortgages work, and then he'll be like a rock star. We'll have him on these calls.
I'm excited for that day. That's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I would say vulnerability, and don't be afraid to share that vulnerability. Like, how often do guys say that it was one of the most important moments of their lives when they were able to provide their daughter with their own room? And what that feels like. Because I remember hand painting my daughter's room with my wife and my daughter. And it's something I'll never forget. Share that vulnerable stuff, share that stuff about being completely freaked out about buying your first mortgage payment. And then guess what happens? You made more money, your mortgage payment stayed the same, and it was never an issue. There was a moment with absolute fear. So one of the best ways to connect is humor and vulnerability.
And so Dave talked about the whole, hey, I managed your mortgage, I'm worth more money. How do you guys approach the annual mortgage review? Is that part of the call up front, or is that not part of what you guys are talking about?
We do talk about it, but we don't have it mastered. And I would say that, if I looked at my team, I would say that maybe half of them are really having that conversation. It's an area that I think we could improve. one of the things that we do say is that we will be, not only are we watching the market when we go to lock your interest rate, but we'll be monitoring your loan going forward. We'll do an annual loan review. But I was with Ryan Grant last week, and he has an amazing system for keeping connected with clients. If anybody doesn't know Ryan, he's got a business out and a service out called The Art of Home Ownership, where he stays connected. And I don't think there's anybody in the mortgage game doing a better job. And I could learn a lot from his model.
I think we'll make sure that Dave interviewed Ryan a couple weeks ago. I'll have him put that in the link down below if you're watching this on video or watching it live on Facebook. Yeah, I think it's just such an interesting market right now. So we talked about, you said, hey, record year ever, right? Mm-hmm. We talked earlier in this call about the fact that we're seeing lots of it. Coach Bill, I love whenever Bill Hart says something, he's like, hey, maybe we should be bragging about our record years, right? Our clients are watching, and, we're seeing stress.
He's right.
We're seeing stress pretty high. And so, it was funny because I texted Josh and said, hey, will you take time out to be on the call? And he was gracious and yes. And then he sent me this text message. I wrote down capacity, adversity, kindness, giving grace, and giving grace to yourself. And I was like, all right, is that like my mantra for the day, my affirmations? He's like, no, that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to talk about on the call. So, but I love that because I do think that's really, it's great, right? So I think there's two pieces of it. I want to focus on the part that you talked about first, which is, hey, we've been crushing it. And a lot of people are still crushing it. And then later on, maybe talk to those who are losing momentum about how to get their momentum back. But you are, we talked about it. Your team is maxed, right? I mean, you're processing, your assistants, no one's ever had that much volume. They're working really hard.
Yeah.
And you guys are getting paid really well. Yeah, they're getting a bonus, but there's a big gap there. So how are you guys approaching that? How's your team feeling, and what kind of advice would you have for folks, whether they're an individual LO and they're feeling the burnout or their team is?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is that this leadership that I'll share really stems from a message that Steve Jacobson, who's the CEO of Fairway, has been preaching to the whole network. And September for Fairway was the month of kindness. And really the message, what I maybe morphed it a little bit, but I came back to our team for our team meeting to kick off October. Actually, I think it was September. And I said, hey, look, I'm looking at the pipelines. I'm looking at how many loans you guys and ladies have. And here's what I know. Nobody has to worry about putting food on the table this month. Nobody has to worry about probably putting 50, 60, 70, 80% of their income in savings this month. It's a layup, right? You don't need to stress about it. But what I'm aware of is that when you have months like this, success will impact you one of two ways. It'll either make you an a-hole, and you'll start to have an ego around, I closed $8 million this month, or I closed $10 million this month. And you'll start to build yourself up that way. And then when things don't go as planned, you can have this attitude like, you better take care of me. I'm the biggest producer, right? I said, we could all respond that way. And everybody in this office is so successful that they could fall into that camp this month. And I said, or conversely, we could try a whole different strategy. Maybe what we could do is we could have record months and, have an incredible amount of savings and income. And we could see if through this experience, through this process, we could actually become better people, nicer people. So when things don't go right, which I guarantee you, they're not all going to go right this month because our ops team is tired and beyond capacity, and things just aren't going to be as smooth as usual. And by the way, if you have twice as many clients, guess what that means? You have twice as many problems. So you're going to feel like, gosh, there's a problem every day. What's going on with that operations team? Well, dude, you have 20 loans closing instead of the 5 that you normally have. So yes, the velocity of issues is faster. So knowing that that's all coming at us, we can either have a record month and become better human beings, or we could have a record month, crush each other, operations, origination, you ruined my relationship with my best realtor, and we can become a-holes. So, what do you guys want to do? And that was the conversation we had around that. And it was a really cool conversation. And people said, if as a group, the group decided that if as a group we could become nicer, kinder, gentler, and better human beings while setting a record month, that would be an absolute win for our group. And so, that's the leadership that came down from Steve Jacobson. I built on it just a little bit and made it ours. And I will tell you, I've seen more branch emails to, we have a branch all email, giving somebody high fives than I have seen blow ups and people coming apart. So I think it's something we all need to be thinking about.
I think that's awesome. One of the things that we were talking about last night is around scripting with your clients. So you already said that, hey, in that video on the TCA, I'm going to tell the guy at the hard loan, hey, you got a really hard loan and we're going to come after you for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of loan officers don't take the time up front to alert their clients, hey, it's record volume. Like, this is what it's going to look like. And I find that they oftentimes put themselves in a bad situation by over-promising and under-delivering, right? The realtor says, hey, can you move up the closing a week? And the LO wants to be sales-minded and says, absolutely, versus saying, you know what? My team is running record volume. What, let me check first, and then being okay with the fact of, asking for stuff earlier, be okay with the fact that, you need to be a little more transparent with your clients about what's going on behind the scenes. Are you guys doing that proactively, or how would you make recommendations to folks on the call?
Yeah, we've actually had to pivot on this. And I realized in this call, what I said was my message when somebody went under contract, which was my this is going to be awesome. We're going to have a lot of fun. That has been my script for a long time, because we've been giving 9 to 10 experiences day in, day out, month in, month out for, since we came to Fairway. So it's been 3 years. And our quality this year is not as high, and the customer experience is not as high. So we've had to shift or pivot that talk just a little bit to say, now we discussed in your particular situation, we're going to be doing a bank statement program. We discussed that we're going to be doing a rapid rescore through the middle of this process. We discussed whatever that challenge was. We discussed that your loan needs to close in 15 days. And in most markets, that's a home run for us. We do this, we're really the experts at this type of issue. This is a different market. I've been doing this for 20 years. We have more refinances, more purchases, more volume. It's like trying to get a football through a garden hose. And so what you can anticipate with your particular situation, with the credit, with the bank statements, with the down payment not in your account, blah, 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 whatever the issue is, that it's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster. It's going to get bumpy and you might lose your breath.
Yeah.
But we're going to get you there, Todd. So just be patient with the process. And if you start to feel throughout the processing and underwriting, if you start to feel some apprehension, just come talk to me. Let's talk it through. I can tell you if it's normal, if I think there's a challenge, but I want you to be aware that this is an unusual time and your loan has some unusual characteristics, and don't be frustrated about that. This is normal right now. And so setting that expectation, and then when you get 3/4 of the way in, and now I'm on my 3rd set of underwriting conditions because my processor made a mistake and didn't correctly articulate what the conditions were, because they're freaking hammered. They're just so exhausted. I mean, they're humans. And they didn't ask for conditions. Now I'm coming back for a 3rd time. The client calls, like, wait, processor, I sent that document 3 times. And I go, remember the roller coaster?
Right, it's the anchor, but you're tying it back to it.
Yeah, remember the roller coaster? Remember the bumps? Remember I said you might lose your heart, your breath just a little bit? And I go, roller coaster, don't worry. Have you ever been on a roller coaster that you didn't end up at the end and everybody was laughing and the little thing came up and we all got off the roller coaster? No, same thing with your loan. You're going to be just fine.
As long as they don't say there's throw up all over you.
yeah. Try not to puke on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think it's really critical, and I love the fact that you're so transparent with this group, right? Because Josh is like, hey, we're used to deliver 9.5s and 10s, and we're not right now. I mean, think about that, right? This is a guy who's saying, hey, we got record volume. And so I think what my takeaway is how, as a loan officer, how can you take this back to yourself, your team, your clients, to make sure that you're doing a better job? Because I think that's, in the end, if there's going to be friction at the end, 9 times out of 10, a better script up front, a little more transparency up front could have prevented the frustration.
100%. And I will tell you this, if you set that expectation that it's going to be a roller coaster and you might lose your heart for a moment or two when we're going through the whoop-de-whoops, but you're going to arrive at the end, And then when things go smoothly, they're like, dude, that was way better than what you said it was going to be, right? So you set yourself up in a situation where you can only win or win.
Right.
If it goes bumpy, you reflect back to the roller coaster comment. If it goes great, they're like, you guys are amazing. I can't believe that you're doing record volume and I got updates from you every 2 days and you got my docs there early. Like, I can't believe how that was flawless.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. So, all right, anything else on that topic before I go to something else you said earlier?
Yeah, thanks. So Todd said those 3 words that none of us should be thinking about right now, which is move up closing. We've had a lot of conversation and dialogue inside of our branch that we all want to be the heroes. We all want to move up closing, and there are markets for that. There are also markets, and you may not be this busy right now, but a lot of us are. And there are also markets where you need to fight for your operations team more than you fight for your clients. Why is that? Well, because your operations team is going to serve 100, 1,000, 10,000 clients over their career. And if you burn them out and spit them out right now, then there's all those positive experiences with clients that you're going to negate, or you're going to have to train somebody new to do. So there's a time to fight and to dig in for clients. There's also a time to fight and to dig in for your operations team. And as a loan originator, if you want to do this at a high volume for a long period of time, you have to know when to pivot between those 2 things. So when somebody asks us in this market, can you move up closing? I don't answer the question. I say, that's a great question. Let me bring in our rock star processor, Heather Sidaway, and let's see where she feels she is in the process. Because remember that conversation about the record volume. And what I can tell you is this woman is working 10 to 12-hour days, and she's got 2 kids at home. So let me see if it's humanly possible. And then I email the processor and I email the client and I say, Heather, how are you feeling about moving over this client? What does that do? 2 things that gets me off the hook from saying something stupid. And I don't have to have all the answers at that point, right? So that takes a lot of pressure off of me. But number 2, it tells the client that Heather is in charge during this part of the transaction. Once we have a handoff, Heather's the quarterback. I'm not the quarterback anymore. I'm on the bench. I may be the coach in the background, but she's the one, managing the transaction, and she is the boss. So what it tells Heather is, Josh respects me enough to let me manage that decision, and he respects me enough to give me the space that I need. If I'm able to do it, I can do it or not. But it's not, got to move up that closing 2 days, Heather. It doesn't really matter that it's 8 o'clock at night and you haven't gone home and seen your kids, right?
Well, and they're also putting their loan, making it more important than all the other loan officers'
Totally.
loans, right? And so that's always the key. And then I've also seen it where they do that, they go through, everyone jumps through the hoops, and then the seller didn't agree to it and they can't close early anyway.
That's exactly right. And by the way, nothing's worse than that, right? Because they've moved up the movers and the alarm company and everything else, and the realtor's like, I told you my loan officer's bad, and you don't close.
Well, it's just asking a better question, right? Awesome. Hey, is this dictated by you or by the seller, right?
Totally.
And then you don't even need to go down that path. And well, hey, ask the seller first, or let me check first, and then we can let the seller know. So, I mean, think about that,
That's
right? I mean,
point.
I just love the fact that you've got the heart, that you guys approached September with kindness, that you're educating your team how to treat everyone well, and you're being transparent about the challenges.
Yeah, I personally think that we are in the most opportune time to originate loans that I've ever seen in, I say 20 years, but it's really 19 years. And I say that, we had this discussion yesterday, Todd, for a couple reasons. Number one, if you listen to Barry Habib, he's saying that he believes that interest rates are going to hit an all-time low. And the reason that he says that, if you look at global sovereign debt, which is like treasury bills, but in Germany and Switzerland and all these other countries, that there's, I think, 16 or 17 trillion dollars in sovereign debt that is at a negative yield.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Crazy. I give you $1 million, and in 10 years, you give me back $950,000. So that has like a magnetic effect on interest rates in the US, because eventually that money is going to start coming over to buy US Treasury bills. It already has started. And as that happens, that'll bring down yields. So there's that polarity issue going with all the negative yielding debt. Number two, pretty good chance that we may be near the end of this economic expansion cycle. And as unemployment starts to tick up, really good chance we go into recession. that is going to bring down interest rates because people are going to move money out of the stock market and move it into the bond market. And some of that will be treasury bills. Some of that will be mortgage-backed securities. Another reason why interest rates are probably going lower. So if interest rates are likely going lower, we also are at a time where mortgage equity is an all-time high. There was a CoreLogic report out last month about $6.3 trillion in tappable equity. That's not total equity. Tappable equity is the difference between 80% loan to value and the mortgage balance.
Which is huge.
And a lot of equity lines can go higher than that. But $6.3 trillion of
opportunity.
Opportunity. Yeah, I was going to say like TNT, right? Like opportunity is a better word for it. And at the same time, we have consumer debt at an all-time high. Student loans, automobiles, credit cards, all of it at an all-time high. Record low interest rates, highest amount of equity of all time, most amount of debt of all time. That is a total recipe for continued expansion in refinance business. And as every 0.25% lower in interest rate, there'll be a huge swath of the population that now it makes sense to refinance. CoreLogic came out with a revised report that they're going to have, I think they're saying 5.6% appreciation. So just think about this next year. Home values are 5.6% higher and interest rates are 1/4 or 0.5% lower. How many more opportunities are we going to have? Okay, that's one piece of this opportunity. The second piece is in our state, in Utah, we're growing jobs like a weed still. There is a tremendous amount of demand for housing. So the purchase business is still pretty darn good. I don't ever remember seeing a market where the refinance opportunities and the purchase opportunities were both this good. I remember great purchase markets, and I remember crappy purchase markets and great refinance markets. I can't remember two markets that were this rich. So I think that we are going to have 2 or 3 years of the most insane opportunity of all time. And I'm hearing some people say, you know, things are going to slow down and we're going to get a breather. I don't think that's the case. I think this is an ultra marathon. I don't think this is a 5K.
Well, I think that's why the conversation from a few minutes ago is so important, right? You've got to make sure you're not wearing your people out. You got to make sure that you're focused on kindness. And then I think the other part is if you're in the position where you're not feeling what Josh is feeling, hey, my business has slowed down, I don't really have it. I think it's a matter of picking up the phone and doing annual mortgage reviews, right? Figuring out, yep, I know you got 3.5%. Yep, I know you don't have any debt. What would move that needle? Set up that next refinance now. I still think that's one of the challenges where loan officers are missing the boat. And they're like, well, I'm not busy. Well, I typically find that if I ask enough questions around what are your activities, they're not actually following up with their past database. They send an email and they got 1 or 2 or 4 or 5, but they actually haven't then gone and picked up the phone. And you know what? If you have only sent an email, you're going to pick up the phone and call people and they'll be like, yeah, I saw that billboard and I already refinanced. Great. Hey, congratulations. Do you mind if I get the information on it so that I can look for an opportunity to save you more money down the road, right? Hey, have you heard about what's going on in the economy? So you can kind of then give them the conversation that Josh just had. And I would say this, if you're not an expert on it, right? Just re-listen to this part that Josh just said where he talked through all these points. Just master that, right? And then maybe do a little more research. Like, you know, you should know what CoreLogic says. Your clients are worried about the last Great Recession and what it did to prices, and they're worried that that's going to happen again. And it's your job as the expert to do what Josh has done and study it so that he can articulate it to his clients in a pretty straightforward way that made sense to, at least to me, hopefully to you guys as well. And I'm not nearly as smart as the rest of this crew.
Yeah, to your point, I think that the question is not just doesn't. Let me say that. Start over. First of all, the question is, does it make sense to refinance to a lower interest rate or a shorter term? That's like, to use Dave Savage's acronym, that's white belt stuff.
Yeah.
Right? The black belt move is this. Tell me the other non-mortgage debts that you have. I'm just jotting this down on a piece of paper or typing it into my CRM. And what are the monthly payments associated with it? Oh, well, I have my truck. I owe $50,000. My payment's $895. Right? You get all those debts.
I stole this from you on an earlier call. You just said it. Tell me about the rest of your debt.
Yeah. Tell me about the rest of your non-mortgage debt. And then we start looking through those, and all of a sudden I find that his wife has a $5,000 car loan, and that $5,000 car loan has a $432 a month monthly payment because originally she borrowed 18,000 or 22,000, and now it's down to 5 Gs. And I'm like, okay, got that. Oh, and you still got some credit card debts. That's another $300 a month. All right, so for 10 grand, I can knock out a $432 car payment and a $327 credit card payment. Now I've got myself, whatever that is, $800, $760 that I can, we can reallocate that capital towards paying down a new mortgage. This is some magic stuff. I'm only taking you from 4.49 to 3.99. It's only a 50 basis point reduction in interest rate, but your mortgage is going down by $127 a month. Now, what we're going to do, because you're at a 95% loan to value, is we're going to plan your closing on the 1st of November. You're going to skip your November payment. That's going to save you $3,000. You're going to skip your December payment. That's going to save you another $3,000 in payment. You're going to get an escrow refund. That's 2 Gs. And I'm going to get you 2 Gs back at closing. That's $10,000. So I'm going to free up $10,000 in cash flow. You're going to pay off your car. You're going to pay off your credit cards. Plus your mortgage payment went down. That frees up $800 a month out of your monthly cash flow or out of your budget. Now we're going to reallocate that $800 a month towards your new mortgage. And of course, because you've got that lower interest rate, now below 4%, guess what happens? You're going to pay your home off in 17 years rather than the 27-year trajectory that you're on. It's going to save you $187,000. That seems like a no-brainer. What do you think, Todd?
You know, to quote Dave Savage, boom, like there you go. Like that's black belt. I mean, think about the conversations that you're having and how can you take a couple of those things that Josh just did and add more value to your client and then close more transactions. That becomes less of a rate shopping environment.
Yeah, and one more thing based on what you said that got me on this tangent is create an Excel spreadsheet, refi opportunities. At the bottom, 4%, 3.99, 3.875, 3.75, 3.625. When you have these calls with clients, if that doesn't work out, right? Like here's the call where it's a dead end. I'm at 3.75%. I'm 10 years into my mortgage. I have no debt and I'm already paying an extra $500 a month towards principal. You shouldn't do a dang thing. You should just keep doing that. Way to go. Way to manage your finances, dude. You know how many of my clients do that? Like 1 out of 100. Awesome job. Now let me ask a question. At what interest rate do you think it would make sense to refinance? Because I believe interest rates are going to go to an all-time low, and we may be able to get you something obscenely low. So like what would make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up? Well, geez, if I could get down to 3.25, I might consider doing a refinance. Cool. Todd Bookspan, 3.25 at the tab at the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet. Then when you have those days where interest rates go down and you go, sweet, I can do 3.625 today. You go to your 3.625 tab, you copy all those email addresses, you email them all at once. You maybe have, and then you have your assistant follow up with a phone call and it says, we just hit 3.625. Based on our last conversation, that's a go. My assistant will follow up with you to get your updated information. Tim Brahim had this script that was so great. He'd set the time, he'd set the rate, and he'd have these files, and he'd call up and he'd go, hey, Todd, it's Tim and it's time.
Yep, that was good. I always love that script. I think it's really critical because that's, I think, where people have call reluctance. And I would tell you this, it's the difference between those of us who work in a normal loan center versus in a call center. So I've got a 7-year arm on my house. It's at 3.375. And guess what? I got on my phone, the recording from my servicer calling me, letting me know that there's an opportunity to refinance my home. Mm. And, you know, I know they don't have more lower than 3.375. However, they don't know if I have debt. They don't know if they can do some of this other stuff for me based on my LTV, which they probably have pulled. And so the difference between the call center folks who are servicing your loans and you might be that they're actually forced to do that as their job, and you have the option to actually pick up the phone.
That's a great point. And the opportunity really becomes, are you offering price or are you offering advice? And even if we go through one of these conversations and I cannot help you, and I just tell you, like, dude, high five on managing your finances so well. You're so far ahead of the rest of my clients. Todd hangs up and goes, that was a really cool call. You know who I know that doesn't handle their finances very well is my stupid brother-in-law. I wonder if I should have my brother-in-law call Josh. And then you get a referral from that call because it was an advice call. It wasn't a price call.
Do you guys ever ask for that referral? Like I was terrible at like saying, oh, thanks, Josh. You know, if you know anyone else that could benefit from my service, please let me know I've got the capacity. Would you say something like that, or you're not that way?
Well, you know, when you were coaching me, if you would have made me do that, I probably could have made a lot more money by
So
now.
it's that call reluctance that
Yeah.
just call me out. All right. So it's my fault that Josh isn't doing 600 million this year. You heard it here.
No, I also am not good at that. And I don't know what that's about. You know, maybe that's just a self-worth issue, or
It's a limiting belief of some
it's
sort.
a limiting belief of some sort.
I would encourage you guys. I mean, I'm trying to encourage my team right now to just ask for that, right? Hey, by the way, I feel really uncomfortable. So I haven't set it up with that kind of that self-deprecating piece. Hey, I feel really uncomfortable, but I know, but I would love the opportunity to serve any friends and family that you have. Is there anyone you can think of that I might be able to reach out to and offer the service?
It's really good scripting. What about, Todd, do you mind if I ask you an awkward question? I feel a little funny. But whenever somebody does that,
a lot of awkward questions.
yeah, that's true. But whenever somebody asks you that kind of question where there's a little bit of vulnerability, you're like, yeah, man, like, go ahead. Say, is there anybody else you know that might want this kind of analysis, like this conversation that we just had? So I think that's really good, good coaching.
Well, Josh will let us know how his team does with that. If we know they do 800 million next year, it's because of this call.
I owe you a lot of money.
All right, so we have 5 minutes left, and I apologize if anyone has questions on in the Facebook group, because Josh and I don't have access to it here, and I feel kind of funny sitting here on my phone looking at it. Normally, if Dave's talking, I can go on my phone and look. But someone did have a quick question about the pyramid of influence. That was Dan Kennedy. Dan Kennedy has a lot of great books on marketing, on time management, just on cool stuff.
Yeah, and I actually tried to Google and find the pyramid of influence by Dan Kennedy, and I wasn't able to find it. So I must have found that in a book or a newsletter, because for years I was a subscriber to their monthly newsletter, and they would send out a newsletter. It was about 10 or 15 pages, and I'd read the whole thing and try and swipe and deploy into my business. But I was not able to find that online. So if anybody does have the pyramid of influence, if they would email it to Dave Savage or to Todd or myself, we'll put it up in the Facebook group.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I'll take a look too. I made a note. We don't have really enough time to get into it, but I think the last thing I would say is that you guys are all working hard. And one of the things that I've always respected at the top level of Josh, you've heard him talking here about his morning routine before, but Josh is really taking care of himself, right? When we were figuring out, okay, which class are we going to go to this morning to work out? Josh is like, all right, well, I need to make sure I get my sleep, right? Hey, I got to fuel and get protein before we get on the call after the workout. And I really think that you do a great job. So what advice would you give in 2 minutes on people taking care of themselves so that they don't fall flat on their face? Because I think that'll also help with the rest of their kindness.
Yeah, and it's also going to take care of how long you can go in this race and how big you can get. If, this is another thing that we learned through the Leadership 360, is that if you're not loving on yourself and you're not taking exceptional care of yourself, it's really hard to take exceptional care of the people around you. And Tim talks a lot about, if your bucket's not overflowing, you can't fill other people's buckets up. And we had a situation this year where I think my operations manager would be okay talking about this, but she had been working so hard and just, work, and she'd forgotten to take care of herself. And in that point, she started, the work quit working.
Yeah.
And so we've all had this idea or this discovery this year that if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not making time to hit the workout, if we're not making time to get the right foods in our bodies, if we're not taking time to meditate, if we're not taking time to take a walk or whatever, floats your boat and makes you happy inside, play with your kids, that you're going to have a really hard time taking care of the people around you. And I think with the opportunity we have in the next 2 or 3 years, if you're not taking care of the people around you, it's going to be impossible to capitalize on the opportunity. And there's no way to take care of the people around you if you're not taking care of yourself. So that's where I think it absolutely starts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really critical. And I always want to bring it up because, Josh and I, he's here in town, we're hanging out with a bunch of entrepreneurs. And the thing that always surprised me with these really high level, high income earning, big thinking, really abundant entrepreneurs is their commitment to health, right? There's a lot of health hackers in this group who think they're going to live for freaking ever, but they really take care of themselves. And I originally watched that with Josh in all of our years together, because he was really ahead of the rest of us in being, super healthy. We all got up and ran, but we still all weighed 20 pounds too much. You were always super fit.
Well, it was an interesting conversation yesterday, and this group is pretty amazing. I don't know what the average net worth of this group is, but they're all they're all 7-figure plus, big time, 8 figures, and some of them 9-figure wealth. And the whole conversation was about not just shooting for the destination, but enjoying the journey and taking care of yourself along that journey. And so these are people that are really mentors to me and are at the absolute top of their game. And in this moment, in this incredibly abundant environment and economy, they're talking about self-care, managing for the long haul, enjoying the journey, stopping to smell the roses. And so if we're not doing that, there's really no way that we're going to be able to capitalize for the next couple of years.
Well, I think that's key. And so last thing I would say, and before I kick Josh out of here, because he's got another call to get on and get back to the meeting, is make sure you guys are celebrating the victories with your team, right?
Good.
Take the time to show gratitude to them. Take the time to take the team out and celebrate. Take the time to send the order of brownies to the underwriting group that's in some other state. Celebrate, be grateful. And then plan something for yourself, right? Your family's probably suffered a little bit, and plan something to take the family away and get away and be looking at that now, because if it doesn't get on the calendar, if you don't spend the money, it's really easy to say, gosh, I'm just so busy. And, I just took my wife to San Diego just for the weekend, and it was just nice. She said, gosh, I didn't realize how much I needed this. And I think a lot of you need it. I think a lot of your families need it. So that would be my last 2 cents. Anything you want to throw in, Josh, before we go?
I don't have any better wisdom than that. Take care of your people, take care of yourself, take care of your kids and your family. This is the time where there's a lot of opportunity and there can be a lot of stress, but let's not forget what's most important.
Well, dude, I'm always grateful for you. Appreciate you taking the time. It's great spending time. Grateful for you guys in the community. So on behalf of Dave and the whole Mortgage Coach team, myself and Win by Noon, thank you all for being here. We'll see you next week here on Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind Call.